Coming up on Arirang News, the South Korean government and ruling party have agreed on a second extra budget for this year, the biggest in the country's history, to fund relief for small businesses and programs to boost consumer spending. South Korea's recent coronavirus infections are increasingly concentrated in the Greater Seoul area. The authorities will be stepping up inspections to make sure that businesses are complying with the rules. And the K-pop sensations BTS are at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart for a fifth straight week, an unprecedented achievement with their new hit song, Butter. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea's ruling party and the government have struck a deal on a second supplementary budget plan for this year. In terms of dollar value, it'll be the biggest extra budget in the country's history. Hong Yoo reports.
The government and ruling Democratic Party agreed on Tuesday a super second supplementary budget plan of more than $29.1 billion. Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki said it will be the biggest supplementary budget in the country's history. The largest portion of the budget, more than $13.2 billion, is to be used to help the economy recover from COVID-19. That includes helping small business owners and boosting consumption of those with low incomes, as well as providing a partial cashback for credit card payments. More than 1 million small businesses that have been hit hard by COVID-19 will receive financial aid. For those whose businesses have closed down, the government plans to help them recover and start again. The recipients of a fifth round of emergency handouts was also agreed on, with everyone except those in the top 20% income bracket receiving payments. More than $10.6 billion will be used to boost the local economy through gift coupons that can be used in local stores and traditional markets. For virus prevention efforts, around more than $3.5 billion has been allocated. That includes developing domestic vaccines, compensation for medical facilities, and the purchase and management of vaccines. The remaining $1.7 billion will be used to stabilize the job market, especially for young people who have been having difficulty finding work amid the pandemic. It will also focus on helping young people with housing and living expenses and provide support for those starting their own businesses. The government will also look to provide job training and create new jobs in sectors such as software and shipbuilding. The second supplementary budget plan will be submitted to the National Assembly on July 2nd. Hong Yoo, Arirang News.
In business news, Samsung Display posted record sales for smartphone displays in the first quarter. Market researcher Omdia says the South Korean company sold 138 million units, raking in around $7 billion. Both those figures are up nearly 50% on year. That strong performance is being attributed to rising consumer spending and Samsung Display expanding its lineup. Consumers in South Korea can now spend Bitcoin at more than 70,000 stores using an app from the local company Dana Fintech. These stores include the chains CU, 7-Eleven, Holly's Coffee, and Gilbo Bookstore. The app from Dana Fintech converts the user's Bitcoin into the South Korean cryptocurrency Paycoin, which the merchants accept. The company is going to add other cryptocurrencies, including Ethereum, later this year. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, good afternoon. Thank you for making time today.
Good afternoon.
Well, on Wall Street overnight, the S&P and the Nasdaq rose to new all-time highs, but the Dow closed lower, led by energy shares and companies tied up with the reopening of the economy. Also, there was a court ruling on Facebook, but a lot of data potentially driving that increase, including the U.S. jobs report this week. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, the tech-heavy Nasdaq and the S&P 500 finished in record high territory on Monday as the investor moved to the safety trade of big tech amid the concern over the latest increase of the COVID-19 infections. On top of that, the investors appeared quite reluctant to open new position ahead of the Friday close. Friday, there's a U.S. payroll reports coming for June, and obviously we need to look at that in order to recognize what Fed might be doing in the future. As you know, the overall interest rate environment of U.S. market seems to be fairly stable at this time, with interest rate being right at around 1.5%. It's been side trading for a while. And due to this, low interest environment is actually affecting positively on the tech stocks continuously, and the so-called these employment numbers not coming to full recovery phase, and that would mean that the overall consumer consumption numbers are not going to be as strong in the long-term futures as the salary increase, then the unemployment ratio remains to be where it is. And still, the COVID-19 has quite significant impact. Having said that, though, as I said, the Nasdaq, so-called low interest rate environment stocks, the growth stocks, were doing very well with the Facebook news and all these positive indications that's clearly showing that a lot of these tech-heavy companies are making record high level of earnings, and that would continue in the future as the interest rate environment remains to be fairly low. All being said, I think that we're looking at Goldilocks phase of U.S. economy, which is quite reasonable interest rate environment due to reasonable inflation numbers and reasonable economic growth rate. We're estimating that the interest rate would remain where it is, and maybe it might have a rising trend, but a very minimal amount, as the inflation number will remain at around 2%, or maybe it might go up, but it's not going to be going up much higher than 2.5% in a longer-term basis. And that the economic growth rate should remain fairly reasonably good at somewhere between 2 to 3% per annum in the future. And if that's the case, then clearly that is a Goldilocks period. And that would mean that the corporate earnings are going to be looking very good for those ones heavily related to the online businesses or the fourth industrial revolution related.
And then here in Korea today, foreign investors and institutions sold quite a lot of shares while individuals were buying. The Kospi closed lower, but the KOSDAQ saw a moderate gain. Tell us about the domestic market.
Right. I think that people are a bit concerned about what BOK might be doing before the end of the year. And also the overall currency environment, and that the U.S. dollar might be strengthening for now, and that means that the Korean won is not going to appreciate in the future. So if that's the case, then the foreign investors are going to be quite reluctant to buy aggressively of Korean equity market. Having said that, the Kospi actually went down by 0.46%, while the KOSDAQ was up 0.45%. This is quite interesting because when you look at the U.S. market, U.S. semiconductor industry related index, as well as the major stocks or ETFs, were all hitting record high level versus Korea's about 40% of the Korean equity market is semiconductor related, and semiconductor related companies such as Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, which amounts to about 35% of the total Kospi, actually didn't do too well today with the foreign investors selling, and particularly institutional investors are heavily selling. But that doesn't make any sense given the fact that the earnings are very strong, and which means that we think that Korea is highly undervalued at the current point in time, despite all these concerns about the high interest rate environment or the implications related to the overall economic conditions or foreign investors net selling. Having said that, if you look at the earnings growth rate, looking at the export growth rate, fundamentals are too strong for the market to remain where it is. We do anticipate cost to go up as high as 3,800 by the end of the year. It would probably most likely to be minimum hit 3,600 territories.
And now oil prices have risen significantly this month. West Texas Intermediate's now around $72, $73 a barrel, but it's down a little today. It seems because so many countries are reinstituting lockdowns, which could hurt demand. What do you see happening with oil?
Right. I think that, oil being even at this kind of rate is quite significant enough, given that, as you know, the global economy are moving away from fossil fuel to going into the renewable energies due to all these incidents related to the weather as well as COVID-19 issues and et cetera. So if that's the case, then we think that the overall demand for oil are not going to be picking up as aggressive as most people are thinking. And also in terms of the supply side, right now, the shale gas companies are not doing anything related to adding additional productions. But if the oil price remains well above $70 and that they are actually cost-wise actually much below, the overall cost is somewhere between oil price of somewhere around $45. That means they have plenty of margin for them to push some more production coming through in order to support the cash flow of the companies. So having said that, we think the oil price will remain at range bound, anywhere between $65 to $75 over the next several years. Particularly, having said the reasons that the energy industries are moving away from fossil fuel to moving into the renewable energies. If that trend continues, we think that the oil price would be reasonably stable. However, I guess in the short term, all these news about the OPEC meetings and the short-term supplies, and there's the airstrike issues, the Iranian-related issues, all that is putting some pressures on the prices. The volatility might come through, but nevertheless, we think that the long-term picture-wise, oil should be range-bound between $65 to $75.
And now turning to cryptocurrencies for a minute. Bitcoin seeing day-to-day swings of 10% or so, perhaps as usual, but it's staying down in the low 30,000 range right now. Another popular cryptocurrency, Ethereum, seeing a bigger increase back to above $2,000. A lot of pessimism out there right now, though, the UK being the latest to shut down a major crypto exchange. What's the story in the cryptocurrency space?
Right. I think that's kind of mixed signals. We got to look at the cryptocurrency as not a substitution for the currency, but as an alternative asset, same as gold or silver. And if we look at the money supply growth rate of U.S., looking at the currency values, the M1 growth rate is quite significant. It's rising by 18% year on year, which means that the value of currency goes down with these kind of additional printing of new money. Having said that, we think that the alternative asset total would likely to go up in the future with the fact that adding these three alternative assets, gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies, amounts to about $14 trillion US, and actually that remained to be the same amount since the beginning of the year to now. And even though if you look at the overall cryptocurrency value total, the price has declined for some of these cryptocurrencies, but if you add up all the new cryptocurrencies and whatnot, cryptocurrency value total has risen by 60% plus from the year to date. So what that means is that obviously there's too many the cryptocurrencies supply that's coming through. I think that's the main reason why the prices are volatile. We need to see that needs to be stabilizing And given the fact that government is going to tackle all these issues about cryptocurrencies, I don't think that all the cryptocurrencies are going to be used as the substitution for transactions. I think that what you said about the Bitcoin and also Ethereum, those are two major the cryptocurrencies that would have some implications similar to the gold or silver. But expanding to the many other cryptocurrency, I think that will be unreasonable, and the government and central banks of major countries would be tackling that issue quite aggressively. So I think the value of the Bitcoin or value of Ethereum might go up in the future, but as for the total value, I think it's going to be quite volatile for the cryptocurrency as a whole.
Well, regulators are making a lot of moves right now, so we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. We'll be watching closely. Thank you, Mr. Yu, for sharing your insights on that with us today. We always appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
South Korea today had the most coronavirus cases it's seen on a Tuesday in 6 months. There are usually fewer cases earlier in the week because fewer tests are done the weekend before. Social distancing is set to be eased this Thursday, July 1st, but the capital area will be stepping up inspections of businesses to make sure they're following the rules. Kim Do-yeon has the details.
With 2 days to go before the eased restrictions take effect, South Korea saw an alarming number of daily cases on Tuesday. 595 seems to be on par with recent daily tallies, but when compared to other Tuesdays, it's a high number. Because of fewer tests over the weekend, Tuesdays usually have much lower numbers. This Tuesday's tally is more than 200 cases higher than from a week before, and the highest for a Tuesday in 25 weeks. Currently, the capital region accounts for nearly 80% of the sharp increase since last month, which was at around 65%. In response, the mayors of Seoul and Incheon, as well as the governor of Gyeonggi-do province, sat down with Prime Minister Kim Boo-kyum to devise plans that will ensure the situation doesn't get out of control. For 2 weeks beginning in July, the Seoul capital area will concentrate on identifying facilities which violate prevention measures through on-site inspections.
There will be a zero-tolerance policy for prevention measure violations, and legal action will be taken, including fines. If such violations are repeated, businesses in the same sector in that area could all be shut down.
Other special measures include local governments in the capital region setting up makeshift screening centers at cluster infection sites. Prime Minister also addressed the Delta variant concerns, saying while the vaccinated could take their masks off outdoors from July, if the Delta variant causes a spike in cases, that exemption will have to be canceled.
Due to not being on their toes, even just for a second, when dealing with COVID-19 variants, countries with the fastest and model examples in vaccination had to tighten their prevention measures. For example, after eased restrictions in the UK, COVID-19 spread quickly starting from the non-vaccinated, leading to 20,000 daily cases from 1,000 just last month.
He added that relaxed measures come with greater responsibility from individuals, and that if those aren't followed, things will only get stricter. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And more research is out suggesting that it may be more effective to mix the vaccines from Pfizer and AstraZeneca rather than taking AstraZeneca on its own. Other research has found similar results mixing other vaccines too. Kim Hyo-sun tells us more.
Research shows that mixing and matching COVID-19 vaccines developed by Pfizer and AstraZeneca generates a more robust immune response than receiving 2 doses of the latter. This is according to a study led by Oxford University, which found that mixing produced high concentrations of antibodies against the COVID-19 spike protein.
But we have shown that the mixed schedules do generate a good immune response. So if there were circumstances that meant that you needed to change things around or you needed flexibility, then I think our data are very reassuring that that would be okay.
The data provides support for some European countries that have started offering alternative to AstraZeneca as a second shot after the AZ vaccine was linked to rare blood clots. The study conducted on 830 participants also showed the highest antibody response was seen in people who had 2 doses of Pfizer's vaccine.
Separate research conducted at Washington University in St. Louis shows the vaccines made by Pfizer and Moderna may protect recipients against the novel coronavirus for years. The findings also show that people who were administered with the mRNA vaccines may not need a booster shot, assuming that the virus and variants do not mutate beyond their current forms. Saying the research is a good sign for the durability of people's immunity developed from vaccination, they add that people who've recovered from COVID-19 and have been vaccinated may not need booster shots going forward, even if the virus does mutate significantly. Kim Hye-san, Arirang News.
A new survey shows how South Korean teens are suffering from the so-called corona blues as the pandemic drags on. The survey by the Korean Society for Traumatic Stress Studies finds that 1 in 10 teenagers have even thought of hurting themselves or committing suicide. More than 14% said they're suffering from severe depression, and more than 34% said they want counseling. The society attributed these findings to a huge increase in time spent online, both for schoolwork and for fun, with a corresponding decline in physical activity. The survey was conducted over 2 weeks in late May on 570 Koreans between the ages of 13 and 18. Rescuers in South Florida are in a race against time, trying to find survivors in the rubble of the condo building that collapsed last week near Miami. The confirmed death toll rose to 11 on Monday as they recovered 2 more bodies. 150 people are still missing. It's been 5 days since about a third of the 12-story building fell down. Records show that the building's managers had been warned by engineers of serious structural problems caused by poor waterproofing. Officials in Florida are said to be ramping up inspections of other buildings. In North America, much of the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia are seeing record high temperatures caused by a so-called heat dome of high pressure that's parked over the region. On Monday, Portland got close to 47 degrees Celsius, a new record for a 3rd day in a row, while Seattle hit a new all-time high of 42 degrees. Canada saw the highest temperature it's ever recorded at 46.6 degrees in the town of Lytton, prompting schools and vaccination sites to close. The U.S. and Canada have both warned of an unprecedented and dangerous heat wave forecast to continue through this week. Climate scientists have warned for a long time that climate change would increase the frequency and intensity of such heat waves. The K-pop sensations BTS continue to smash records with their latest single, Butter. The song's been #1 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 chart for an unprecedented 5th straight week. Kim Yeon-sung reports.
K-pop boy band BTS is once again on a record-breaking spree. BTS's summer single, Butter, has topped Billboard Hot 100 chart for the 5th week in a row. Before BTS, no pop group has ever topped the Hot 100 for 5 straight weeks. Butter has proven even more popular than Dynamite, which was #1 for a total of 3 weeks last year.
Butter is likely to win more awards than Dynamite, especially at the Grammys. They consider a song's mass appeal as well as its artistic value, so Butter has a good chance to win rave reviews from the Grammys selection board.
But Butter's popularity continues to grow by the day. Data accumulated last week noted a 15% increase in the song's sales. In the last week alone, the number of the song's downloads totaled up to more than 128,000. And in each of the past 5 weeks, BTS's Butter has sold more than 100,000 downloads, the first song to do so since Ed Sheeran's Shape of You, which was released in 2017. Butter has also increased its radio presence, with the song growing 6% in radio airplay audience impressions with 27.6 million points.
Butter is a retro pop dance music that has universal appeal. This song doesn't feel exclusively Korean. Everybody, including listeners in North America, feels good after listening to the song, which is why it's so popular.
BTS's feat with Butter is impressive all around. Billboard said on Monday that out of all the 54 songs in the history of Billboard that have topped the Hot 100 chart upon debuting, there were only 11 songs that spent the first 5 weeks at #1. and Butter is one of less than a dozen. Also, BTS are the first Asian artists to remain at the apex of the chart for more than 4 weeks. The previous record was set by a Japanese singer in 1963, whose song retained the #1 spot for 3 weeks. BTS have now spent a total of 10 accumulative weeks at the top of the Hot 100 chart, with Butter, their 4th song to help them gain this accolade. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.